Let me ask you something. What's holding you back from crushing LSAT logical reasoning? Maybe it feels overwhelming, like there are just too many question types to master, or you can't figure out why some questions seem impossible to crack. I've been there myself. My LSAT journey started off with a 152, and I had to claw my way up to a 175 on test day. The key insight that got me there? The real secret to logical reasoning success isn't about memorizing question types, it's about deeply understanding how arguments work. Today, I'll share the strategies that not only helped me, but have also prepared my students into the 170s. We're going to break down how to approach logical reasoning, including what's recently changed for the LSAT and what will impact your prep in 2025 and beyond. Of course, the biggest news is that logic games are gone post the June 2024 LSAT, when LSAT officially replaced logic games with a second scored logical reasoning section, meaning that logical reasoning is now 2/3 of your LSAT score. If you master this section, you'll be unstoppable. So let's dive into the outrageously simple strategies that will help you dominate logical reasoning in 2025 and beyond. Now, of course, the elephant in the room is the removal of logic games. For years, they were a make or break section. Some loved them, others dreaded them, but now the test has shifted dramatically. With 2 scored logical reasoning sections, every improvement you make in this area carries double the weight. Think about it. If you improve your logical reasoning score by just 3 points, that's a 6-point boost to your overall LSAT score. So the stakes for logical reasoning have never been higher. Mastering this section is the single most effective way to maximize your score. But the good news is you don't need to memorize 15 different question types or use overcomplicated strategies. What you do need is a framework for understanding arguments and applying that framework consistently across questions. Now, when I first started studying for the LSAT, I was told the key to logical reasoning was to categorize every question into one of the official types: flaw, strengthen, weaken, inference, and so on. But over time, I realized that focusing too much on a question type made the test feel more complicated than it really is. What truly matters is understanding the argument in the stimulus. When you break down the argument, its conclusion, evidence, any gaps, you gain control over the question. In fact, many question types are interconnected. For example, if you're good at flaw questions, you can leverage that same skill set for weaken, strengthen, and necessary assumption questions as well. The argument doesn't change, only the task you're asked to perform does. This shift in perspective changed everything for me, and it's one of the first things I teach my students. Once you stop obsessing over labels and focus instead on argument analysis, logical reasoning becomes far more manageable and even predictable. Now, the biggest tool that helped me break through plateaus and has done the same for my students is the Socratic review method. This takes the guesswork out of logical reasoning by forcing you to analyze every mistake in a systematic way. It's all about asking yourself the right questions. First, what's the conclusion? Second, what evidence supports that conclusion? Third, what's the gap between the evidence and the conclusion? Fourth, why is each wrong answer choice tempting for me? And why is it ultimately wrong? 5, why is the correct answer unappealing at first glance to me? And what ultimately makes it correct? This process not only helps you understand why you got a question wrong, but it also highlights the traps you're most likely to fall for. Maybe you're tempted by answers that restate part of the stimulus, but don't actually address the argument's logic. Or maybe you're swayed by strong wording that feels definitive, but oversteps the bounds of what the question is asking. By identifying these patterns, you'll stop making the same mistakes. Now, here are 3 quick wins you can implement right away to improve your logical reasoning performance. First, master necessary assumption versus sufficient assumption questions. That distinction is huge. These types are often misunderstood. If you misunderstand them, you're getting both of them wrong. A necessary assumption is something that must be true for the argument to work. It's a non-negotiable keystone. A sufficient assumption, on the other hand, is something that, if true, guarantees the conclusion. And the problem is, many LSAT prep companies fail to explain this distinction clearly. Some even lump them together into a vague catch-all category of assumption questions, which only adds to the confusion. Make sure you're crystal clear on the difference and prioritize necessary assumption questions because they're more frequent on the LSAT. Second key insight here is to distinguish must be true versus most strongly supported questions. They are both inference style questions, but the level of certainty they require is different. Must be true means there's zero wiggle room. The correct answer must be provable from the stimulus. However, most strongly supported allows for some flexibility. The correct answer doesn't have to be airtight, but should have strong backing from the stimulus. Missing this nuance can lead to unnecessary mistakes. Third and final tip for you here, understand what it means to weaken an argument. Now, weakening an argument doesn't mean destroying it. It just means making the conclusion less likely to follow from the evidence. Many students waste time looking for an answer that totally obliterates the argument when a subtler option is correct. Now, keep in mind that weakening often involves pointing out an alternative explanation or exposing an overlooked assumption. Now, here's how to approach the new logical reasoning sections in 2025. Because LSAC now has 2-score logical reasoning sections to play with, they have more room to test a wider range of reasoning skills. Here's what to expect in 2025 and how to prepare for it. Early indications suggest that LSAC is emphasizing more complex reasoning patterns, such as numerical reasoning, like percentages versus absolute numbers, conditional logic, and arguments involving formal logic. Make sure you're comfortable analyzing these patterns across multiple question types. My thought here is that LSAC is looking to test these concepts in logical reasoning since they can no longer test them in logic games because there is no longer any logic game section. So make sure you brush up on and understand these methods of reasoning. Second, focus on the most common question types to start with. Again, necessary assumption, flaw, and inference. Master these first before moving on to less common types like parallel reasoning or evaluate the argument. Third and finally, embrace the predictability of the LSAT. Because while the LSAT is challenging, it is also highly predictable, and you have dozens of practice tests to learn from to impact your studying going forward. The types of reasoning tested and the traps used in answer choices are consistent across exams since the beginning of the test. So use this to your advantage, practicing with real LSAT questions and tracking your performance by question type and reasoning pattern. And before you dive into question types, make sure your foundation is rock solid. You've got to be fluent in conditional indicators and evidence and conclusion indicators. Conditional indicators, words like if, only if, unless, and without are the backbone of many logical reasoning questions. For evidence and conclusion, phrases like because, therefore, since, and thus will help you identify the argument's structure. And if you struggle with these basics, focus on them first. They're essential for understanding the test. Now, if you'd like my help getting the highest possible LSAT score, whether you still need to build that foundation or you're looking more to refine your weak areas, my team and I would be glad to help you out on your journey to scoring 170 plus whenever you're taking the LSAT. At LSAT Unplugged, we offer live online classes via Zoom, on-demand video courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching. You can check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. Now, big picture, mastering logical reasoning isn't just about getting a higher LSAT score, it's also getting you ready for law school. The skills you develop, whether it's analyzing arguments, identifying flaws, and reasoning under pressure, are the same skills you'll use in law school, on the bar exam, and as a lawyer. So what you're learning now will help you in your legal career. And if you'd like my help again, check out the links below to get your personalized plan for improvement. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.